Okay, the first question is, what do you mean when you say a person needs to have the idealized image, core fears, and defense strategy of the types in the tritype to be that tritype? And then a second question to that is, how can you tell? Often comment in different places that in order to have a particular type in your tritype, we must see the idealized image, but you also must identify with the core fears and demonstrate them. So identify is just the beginning, but if you don't demonstrate those fears, then it's possible that that isn't the type of that center in your tritype. Or you might have the right tritype, but have the order a little off. And then what do I mean by the defense strategy? We can relate to other types, but if we use a defense strategy of a different type, that's the lead. So a lot of times people that are 6s and 9s will struggle because they naturally are tracking behaviors. And in the case of the defense strategy of 6 and 9, it can be elusive, but it can be observed by someone else. And as someone begins to learn how to work with it and the Enneagram from this perspective, it really helps identify your actual types in the tritype, and it's life altering. Let's give an example. Let's use your tritype. How you have the idealized image as an 8 of being powerful, and you fear being disempowered as an 8. You also have the 4 and the 6. So the secondary issues are the 4's fear of being inadequate and the 6's fear of not knowing what they should to be safe. And so the fear ends up being a fear of fear itself, which is why 6s don't recognize their 6s, because they try to manage what causes them to feel fear. Because they're prepared, they no longer realize that their defense strategy is to do everything to avoid feeling fear. So as a 8, 4, 6, how do you experience that? Those 3 types, and the defense strategies, of course, included.
Yeah, I always joke that you can often find me floating down the river of denial. It's a go-to response for me. Quite literally, this isn't even happening. I'll forget that something's going on. When I talk to someone who doesn't have 8 in their tritype, they will almost be shocked, if not literally shocked. Like, wait, what do you mean? Like that you forgot about, you weren't even thinking about it? It's like, no, like it's like poof, gone. It allows me to maintain the strong presence that I want to be able to present. That way I don't lose the ability to be there for others. I want someone to know that I'm strong enough for them to lean on me. And if I'm showing that I'm stressed or that there's, some sort of vulnerability in the armor, then maybe I'm not that protective source that I want to be viewed as. And 4, yeah, I definitely don't want to come off as inadequate. I want to be seen as not just like, I mean, for lack of a better phrasing, like I kind of want to come off as impressive. I want to come off as, unique. And like, there's like, I want to be noticed for like, oh, you do that in this way. There's something really special about the way that I'm doing something that I like being noticed in that way. It's like, oh, like, like I can be a therapist, but like, I'm the only therapist I know that does tritype, like things like that. And feeling like I'm not good enough, that I am somehow falling short, is a huge fear. And I definitely use my 8 to mask that I'm even concerned about that. It took my wife a long time to even recognize that I had 6 in my tritype, because she didn't see me presenting the looping thoughts that the 6 has, because again, that would look like vulnerability, weakness, like that I was questioning myself, all these things that directly go against my primary number. So even though all of these things happen, I'll even notice that like my 6 will really, really highlight in like an 8 way. Like I really start looping if I haven't heard from my wife by the time I'm supposed to. Now all of a sudden I'm wondering, is she in a ditch somewhere? But my protectiveness comes in like, oh gosh, am I not there when she needs me? But unless that's happening, I try not to even think about it. So I really notice that I kind of do things like quite literally in order. First, I go into denial and then. So it's very, very accurate. I think that's why that it's so important, that first question you discussed, because you got to
And
show the things.
the 8 has the denial, trying to not be disempowered. So shutting off the memories of it. So we don't feel the disempowerment, because you're right. We can't move forward and handle whatever we need to handle if we're trapped in emotion or slowed down in a way by emotion. And then the 4 has the defense strategy of interjection. Can you say how you experience that with the 4 in your tritype?
I mean, I'm just really, really hard on myself, and I'm always self-evaluating, and and it's good versions. It's me trying to grow and be more emotionally advanced and emotionally growing, emotionally aware. It's just really important to me that I really understand myself, but I can just really use that in a negative way where I kind of notice something I didn't do, or I can really just, I don't know, the parts that I hope are unique or special or cool about me, I won't label them as such. And it's really self-deprecating. It's an unfortunate thing because it clashes with how I want to present. It's interesting how I can present so confident, because I am very confident, but at the same time, all it takes is one even kind of misunderstanding implied by someone else, and then instantly I will then start self-assessing about that area. And then of course, when it teams up with the 6, it's just like even worse. I always say the 4 emotionally loops and the 6 mentally loops. So it's just like,
Yeah, and interjection, the way Naranjo modified it, because there are defense mechanisms, but when we say defense strategy, it's based on what I learned from Naranjo as to how he modified the mechanisms. So you might read descriptions of the defense mechanisms and say, okay, that seems like a type, but why is that the particular one chosen? And Naranjo actually did modify it. And that's the difference when we say defense strategies. But with interjection, as he saw it, you don't need to have the person in front of you saying something wonderful or negative about you. Interjection, you always hold both. So if there's anything in your environment, or you even observe 2 people talking to one another, and there's something that reminds you of a wonderful feeling, you feel it within yourself based on your own life experience. But if you observe someone talking in a critical way, if you have 4 in the tritype, you will immediately go into an interject of someone that talked to you that way. Now, what's important is you feel the emotion as though it's new.
Yep.
And other people can have interjection, but they're not necessarily re-experiencing the event here and now. So I definitely know that as your mother, but what would you say about that?
Well, coming from the therapeutic lens, I would really highly correlate it with like PTSD, where like it sends me right back to that moment. It feels very real. And honestly, I can really struggle to tell the difference between what I'm feeling and what I'm picking up in the other. So I end up feeling double. So I'm feeling very reactive, very emotional in the moment. It's wonderful when it's a good thing, right?
Yes.
I can be really happy for someone else, and I can be in that happiness with them. And I use that tool all the time in my work. Very, very validating. And it's a wonderful tool to help people really feel seen, because I can literally feel it with you. But if I internalize something that I'm seeing between 2 people, not even directed towards me, like you mentioned, or if it's happening towards me, if something's happening, I can't tell if I'm like projecting and then therefore identifying with that projection. If I'm picking up on what they're talking, if it's my own feelings, it gets all muddied.
6 has projection. Yeah, so that you're an interesting mix of interjection and
Bing,
projection.
bing, 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 bing. Yeah.
And it's really helpful to understand that. And as we go, we'll say more about this, but to use this example, why someone uses their defense strategy is to maintain their idealized self-image. So back to the very first question, why do I talk about the importance of that? Is that we all get triggered if our idealized image is questioned in any way, because it's how we survive in the world. It's how we hold our ego together. And so the superego message is coming from the idealized images together. And whatever the types share in common becomes of the utmost importance. So the 468 is especially good at immediacy of seeing what's going on, what's potentially a threat, what needs to be protected, what needs to be defended, and what needs to be called off. So that's why the Tritype maintains that focus. Now, the other thing with the 4 is that this idealized image is I am authentic. So sometimes I'll work with people that they've read a lot about type 4, and unfortunately, most of the negative parts of type 4, actually all 9 types, are up on these different sites, social media sites, that if someone happens to have a tritype that's more confident and more mature, they won't recognize themselves in those descriptions. But if I do the inquiry process, it will move down to the worst thing that can happen is to not be authentic to your feelings, your true sense of authenticity. Now, 8s want to be an individual and authentic, but with 4, it's totally disruptive if they feel inadequate against that authenticity. So people that are 4s that maybe have 7 and 8, so it presents as a more confident 4, they won't recognize themselves because of the negativity that's been written. But that, as I said, that's true of all the types. We have to modify what was overly emphasized. What would I say too is with the 6, it's this image of being friendly, engaging, interpersonal in a kind of mental way. And then whether you're sexual or social or self-pres influences it. What would you want to add to that, Spencer?
I mean, if we're speaking solely from like 4, 6, 8, it's the authenticity, I think, is triple magnified because the 6 wants to be honest, the 4 wants to be authentic, and the 8 wants to be real. So I've been told once or twice that I'm too honest, which I didn't even know was a thing. I don't even know how you can be too honest. You just say what's honestly on your mind. But I learned that I was surpassing what is socially expected to be said in certain moments. So that desire to really present oneself, especially with this tritype, is I've noticed to be really, really high. And I've found that in clients who share that tritype. Whereas when you start mixing with other numbers, it starts shifting a little bit.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, any person that has 4 and 8 in their tritype wants to be authentic, but then the head type determines how you're going to assert that and how you're going to demonstrate it in a way. So the 4, 7, 8 also cares and they think they're authentic, but if they come on too strong, they're going to try to get around things. They're going to use the defense strategy of the 7 and reframe it and come off a little lighter to lighten up this need for absolute authenticity. And 4, 5, 8 is going to do it with their information and knowledge. And all 3 will be quick, very fast to say their truth, so to speak. But that's having 4 and 8 in the tritype. But the 6 in there makes it the most immediate. And then the 4, 5, 8 will do it intellectually, And the 4, 7, 8 will try to adjust and not be as severe in a way. So sometimes they won't seem like an 8, and the 4, 5, 8 can seem like an 8. And the 4, 6, 8, even if they're not an 8, they will seem 8-ish because of that quick reactivity. And the other thing is how they're modified. Like each type, depending on their tritype, qualities will be amplified or minimized depending on which types are in the tritype. So if you have the 4 and 8, you're always going to be intense. It's just what kind of intense will depend on your head type. And each Enneagram type shares something in common with every other Enneagram type, and something exactly the opposite of every other Enneagram type. So when you're looking at what happens with tritype, it's the tripling effect of a value. And that will be the more specific focus that tritype offers. And why I say it creates a new type unto itself,